Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Tim May podcast. This is yours truly, Tim May, with yet another version as Ohio State now dives deep into the Big Ten season, coming off a 76-5 come-from-behind win over Miami University on Saturday. A lot of questions as that game started, a lot of answers as that game ensued. And I'll be talking about that later into the podcast with my friend Austin Ward here on Lettermen Row. We'll also be breaking down a play, my favorite play from Saturday, which was the touchdown pass from Justin Fields to Benjamin Victor to the back of the end zone. One of the bolder plays you'll see called on 3rd and 20 anytime. But before that, Ohio State's playing Nebraska. This has been a series that should have had about 80 renewals in it, but hasn't because Nebraska for a long time was in the Big 6, the Big 8, and the Big 12. And now it's, of course, in the Big 10. And should be one of the great rivalries in sport when you consider all the tradition involved with Nebraska football and Ohio State football. But here they are playing for one of the few times ever on Saturday night, nationally televised game, primetime game. It's supposed to be the showdown game. This is supposed to be the pothole game, according to a lot of us people who were looking at the Ohio State schedule before the season started. What's going to be that Iowa? What's going to be that Purdue game that could trip up Ohio State again in his quest to make the college football playoff? And, man, this has all the earmarks of being that game if you consider how Nebraska has played at the beginning of this year. Not exactly a well-oiled machine, yet the Cornhuskers are 3-1 in the second year under Scott Frost. But to give us a little more insight into Nebraska, I've got a fellow I've known for a while. His name's Sam McKewon. Sounds like the name of Colonel Sam McKewon from some outpost in Nebraska, but he works for the Omaha World-Herald. And Sam, thanks for joining my show, man.
You bet. Absolutely.
I'm going to call you Colonel from now on, if that's okay.
That's fine.
All
that's
right.
Fine.
Actually, I'll call you Big Sam. But, hey, Sam, real quick.
I am big.
I know you are. I know you are, man. You're big in all kinds of ways, man. But I digress. Bottom line, just give us a feel for this Nebraska team as you guys cover that team about as well as any paper in the country covers a team. But where do you think this team stands right now headed into this Ohio State game? And by stands, I mean, what's your grip on this team? I mean, what are they all about?
Well, they're still working themselves out. I think that'd be the best way to put it. They survived at Illinois. They won 42-38. Probably shouldn't have been a close game. They racked up almost 700 total yards, but had 4 fumbles that led to 21 Illinois points. That's why it was a close game. So they have some explosiveness. They have some playmakers on defense. If it ever got put together into a complete game, I think they'd be pretty darn good. But at this point, it comes and goes. Mm-hmm. The offense is hot and cold. It started very cold. It did some good things at Colorado, and then some good things at Illinois. The defense has been generally solid, but I would say hasn't really been terribly tested on the ground until Illinois, and Illinois ran for more than 200 yards. So it's one of those teams that, the way that Nebraska football operates, just the way that it is around here is it's 24/7, 365. Even if the program is not where Ohio State's at, there's this memory of the time when it was. Mm-hmm. And so people kind of are still remain fueled by that. And there's 50 people covering the team. It's a huge media pool. Everybody's producing content. And I think part of what happens around here is everybody gets really excited for the season. Everything's super positive, and then the season hits and it's reality and it's pragmatic. And, and then all of a sudden, it's like, well, it doesn't look as good as we thought we were told it was going to look. And then the fans get a little whatever. And now here comes Ohio State, a program that I think is certainly the Big Ten, pace setter, the best program in the league by some margin. I think there was a thought they might have somewhat of a dip this year because of a new head coach, but that hasn't happened yet. They have extraordinary talent, and Nebraska's got game day coming here for the first time in 12 years. And I think there's a sense of like, nobody here really knows how this game's going to go.
Yeah.
As the coach is Scott Frost, used to be a Nebraska quarterback. I think he feels a lot of responsibility for bringing this program back to where it used to be. I think that responsibility is a little unfair to him. I don't know that they can get back to where they were in the 90s. That would be where Ohio State is today. I don't know if Nebraska can get to that, but he's tasked with getting the team better week after week, and they seem to be getting. They're not bad. Their A game would probably have a chance of beating Ohio State, but we don't know if their A game is going to show up to Memorial Stadium on Saturday night. There's just no way of knowing because they haven't shown it yet.
Yeah, by A game you mean the first letter of Adrian Martinez's name? No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
But it's. I mean, I've touted him going into the season. I've liked this guy since I first heard about him. During the recruiting when Ohio State was actually interested in him. And he turned when they needed him desperately the other night at Illinois. He turned it up a notch, and that's what I think he is capable of. Day in and day out. And I reminded people last year. He got that unfortunate knee sprain. Against what was it, Colorado, where the guy twisted his leg early last year. He was literally playing on one good leg, the entire year after that, and yet they came into Ohio Stadium and gave Ohio Stadium a hell of a run. Of course, a lot of people did last year offensively, and that's what's different. That's what's different about this Ohio State team is it's number 3 in the country right now in points given up, and number 3 in the country in points scored. And here's a Nebraska team that the other night, like you said, it looked like a car that was trying to get out of a mud hole and kept getting almost out and then falling back in with a turnover and then getting back out and falling back in. But there was no doubt which program had the stouter engine I'm talking about, and clearly, Nebraska got it done in the end. And what was funny, I watched the entire Scott Frost post-game press conference you guys were at. By the way, was that still in that little tiny little room at Illinois? I think it probably was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It looks a lot more serene on television, but he's got to lay it out matter of fact. He can't turn the ball over, and like they did, and yet they found a way to win. Like you said about maybe quelling the public outcry when you come into a season with big hopes. Some people are picking you to win the Big Ten West, and so far you've been inconsistent. Let's put it that way. I think that's the best way of putting it, right? Inconsistent, maybe from one possession to the next, one defensive possession to the next. But you can see the potential there, especially on the offense, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the offense has been inconsistent. The defense has been relatively consistent. They're as good as they are going to be. They're not bad. I mean, the defense is pretty good. It's much better than it was last year, and they gave up 38 points on Saturday, but a lot of that was, Illinois started a possession at the 2 and they started one at the 9, and so there's those things happen, but their defense is pretty good. It's been relatively consistent. Okay. The offense has been inconsistent. Yeah, I mean, they had 4 turnovers. And they had 4 fumbles, and those turned into 21 points. So anytime that you're turning, 25% of your possessions in a game are turnovers, then you're pretty inconsistent. Simultaneously, they scored 6 touchdowns. So they know how to move the football. And they have, Martinez is a very, very talented quarterback. He seemed a little, I don't know what it was in the first game, bad. And it didn't seem right. And the snaps weren't good and things just seemed off. And then in game 2, he was better. In game 3 was even a little bit better than that. And then when they got down and they absolutely needed to say, screw it, we're just going to go 5 wides and we're going to throw the football and we're going to let him kind of, do what he does and be in 2-minute drill mode. He got a lot better. Yeah. Now they still ran the ball well. And he ran the ball well in that fourth quarter, especially.
Yes.
But when they spread it out and they start saying, all right, now we're going to move fast. We're going to go at a tempo and we're going to get the defense off balance. That's when Martinez seemed to be in his element. And so the challenge with that is when you face a really good team like Ohio State, if you don't score with that tempo, then you're putting your defense back on the field pretty consistently. So I think there's some ways in which Nebraska's got to continue to improve at that. and then they've got to find a way to contain Ohio State's pass rush, because if they have given up some sacks this year, and if Ohio State's pass rush is coming full bore, Ohio State could get 3 or 4 sacks, and I don't think Nebraska would have much of a chance of winning the game if Ohio State is in the backfield all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, key guys to watch when Nebraska has the ball will be Adrian Martinez and on the one side and Chase Young on the other, it'll be Chase Young, Ohio State's defensive end, who has now how many sacks do you have now, Austin? I think it's 7 or 9 sacks. He had 2 strip sacks on Saturday against Miami when Ohio State, like I said, had a come-from-behind win. But those were really flippers. Real quick, let's touch on something else. You talked about it. I grew up most people who follow this podcast know and follow me know that I grew up going to Alabama games when I was a little kid because that's where I was born. And 2 of my favorite memories as a youngster were watching Alabama beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl after the 65 season to wrap up the national championship. And in the 66, maybe Bear Bryant's best team beating Nebraska in the Sugar Bowl. I think it was 31-7. But I've known about Nebraska football forever, Bob Devaney, et cetera, and then turning the reins over to Tom Osborne. In my opinion, Johnny Rodgers is still one of the most exciting players ever to play college football. Rich Glover is a guy that I'm not sure there was ever a greater, more effective middle guard in football history for a couple of seasons than that guy. So I kind of go back a long ways with Nebraska, knowing about their big-time program and through the years. But what, in your mind, what exactly slipped after Osborne was done that Nebraska is still trying to crawl out of that hole from the standpoint of being just that consummate program? Was it recruiting, all-around recruiting? Obviously, they played for the Big Ten championship when Bo Pelini was there, But was it all-around recruiting? What would you put your finger on there?
Oh, it's a big, broad conversation, and the answer to that question is often the source of the friction and contention within the fan base and within sort of the power structure at Nebraska. Mm-hmm. I think most people would tell you that what slipped was the administrative support for the football program, really around the time that Tom Osborne left the building. So, all the way back to 98, 99. Some people will blame the chancellor at that time. Some people will blame the athletic director who fired Frank Solich. I'm of the belief that Solich deserved at least 1 more year, maybe 2 more years.
Let me interrupt you. There's an Ohio State connection there. Steve Peterson, I think, is the guy we're talking about.
Yes,
and
we are.
I met him for the first time when he was named the recruiting coordinator at Ohio State here when John Cooper named his first staff. So he went from recruiting coordinator at Ohio State to athletic director at Nebraska and decided to go another way with the Nebraska program. But go ahead. Yeah, he
did, and he was a recruiting coordinator at Nebraska too. He came from Pittsburgh. He came to Nebraska in the winter of 2002.
Right. Really
under the recommendation of Tom Osborne. Everybody thought that Steve Peterson should get the job. He did. He made a very quick change in Frank Solich. He claimed at the time to have had a coach ready to go. We've never really been able to figure out who that was. But after firing Frank, they did like a 60-day search. It was embarrassing. Mm-hmm. They finally got Bill Callahan after Callahan was let go by the Raiders. Mm-hmm. And Callahan's offense was very different from the option style offense that Nebraska had run. Callahan was not as bad as he has been
portrayed.
Yeah, he wasn't. He recruited actually quite well, and was a pretty good offensive coach. He struggled to connect with the players, but Callahan wasn't as bad as people said he was. There were people, I think, within Nebraska athletics who were mad that he was there, angry that Peterson was there, and I think there was some element of joy when Callahan was let go. When Peterson was let go in 2007, then Pelini took over. And, Bo won 9 games every year. You can't say he didn't do that. His best teams were with Callahan's players. I'll say that too. But the piece with Bo, and this was probably the regrettable part, is I always liked Bo. He's a former Ohio State football player.
Right.
But Bo wore a chip on his shoulder, the size of the state of Ohio. And I think a lot of it was born in this he wanted to sort of set things right. And, he was doing it for the honor of Solich and for Osborne. And
yeah.
I think that weighed on him tremendously too. And so by the third or fourth year, Bo's program had turned into this us against the world, and included in the world was the media and the fan base and players saying they like playing road games more than they like playing at home, and all this goofy stuff that, where he was trying to create this culture within the program of, everybody's against us. We have we can't count on anybody but us. And so that happened, and then he got let go, and he sort of poisoned the well on the way out. Really poisoned the well for Mike Riley, who came in, and that didn't go well at all. Mike was a very malleable guy. He said yes to everybody.
Yeah.
People will say they liked Mike Riley as a person, but not as a football coach. And Mike said yes too much and didn't say no enough. And so he was run out of town after his third year, and rightly so. They went 4-8. They were done. And then Scott Frost came in, and he had this undefeated season at Central Florida. And so, Frost comes from that same sort of tree of Osborne. The neat thing about Frost is he has some other mentors in Chip Kelly and Mike Tomlin and Tony Dungy and Bill Belichick. He has coached with and under a lot of really interesting, diverse personalities. And so I think that gives him a background that's a little bit different. And he's got a good offense. I mean, everybody agrees that Scott Frost knows how to score points and rack up yards, and they've done that. So I think their hope is that they can take what used to be good about Nebraska, strength and conditioning, nutrition, and merge it with this new school offense. And it is different from what Nebraska used to run. And in doing those two things over time, they're going to be really good again. I don't know if they're going to be Ohio State good. Ohio State right now is unbelievably good and has a recruiting juggernaut and all these other things.
Right.
So I don't know if Nebraska can be Ohio State good again. I'm not sure Nebraska knows that. At some point, if Scott gets this thing to 9 or 10 wins a year, I think people's approach will be different than it was under Bo, which is like, well, he's just, he hit a plateau. We better get rid of him. I think with Scott, if he gets back to that point, people will be more patient, and they will abide by it longer than they would have. Because I think it's going to be really hard to get all the way back, and I don't know if Nebraska will get there. They have to beat teams like Ohio State to get back there, and I'm not sure they're going to win this game. I'm not sure anybody in the media here thinks Nebraska is going to win this game. They'd have to play very, very well in order to pull it off. Yeah,
I mean, like you were talking about, though, when he gets it back to 9 or 10 wins, that's a reality check for everybody. I mean, if they're remembering correctly. But you and I both know that once it gets back to 9 or 10 wins, and the fans are really fickle, they will want that next step. And whether that next step can happen in this modern day, I think is interesting, because Bob Devaney and Tom Osborne, along with being great head coaches, they were great recruiters. I mean, they were. That was what set them apart. They got guys to come to Nebraska, and the key is to get, you win with people, as Woody Hayes said, and that's what is going to be the next step, I think, for Nebraska. Is get, Scott Frost is, I think he makes for an attractive situation there, because he's a youngish guy. He has great ideas offensively, and he understands that where the bread is buttered too is on the defensive side. That's what separates you, and I think they've made strides, like you said, just in the last 2 years of becoming better on defense. Hey, let's just jump real quick. So what do you expect Saturday night? What are the expectations, the realistic expectations for this game from your vantage point?
Nebraska's going to take a lot of chances on defense. They're going to try to heat Justin Fields up. They'll come with exotic pressure packages from various angles. They trust their corners. They're going to probably leave their corners out on an island a time or two. They did that last year when they were at Ohio State, and they gave Dwayne Haskins some problems. And if there's one thing that Ohio State was really good at last year, it was throwing the football. Yeah. And Nebraska gave them some problems. Haskins got sacked once. I think he threw an interception. It was one of his worst games. And so they're probably going to try to heat Justin Fields up. I think Ohio State's wise to try to use Justin Fields as a runner and try to get him involved in the run game and try to catch Nebraska in a blitz and get him outside. So I think Fields' running ability will help them. Nebraska could not stop JT Barrett and Braxton Miller in recent years. They were much more comfortable with Dwayne Haskins in that pocket than they were with Barrett or Miller when those guys could run. Mm-hmm. And so I would think Fields has got to get involved in the run game. So that's what I see on the defensive side. I think Ohio State's going to have success. I do. I mean, I think they're going to score and they're going to have success, but Nebraska might be able to get a couple of turnovers. On the other side of the ball, hard to say. Ohio State's front seven is really good, really physical. If Nebraska can't get ball between the tackles, they do have an oddball running back, Maurice Washington, who is very hard to stop. You can't really – he doesn't know where he's going to go before he goes there. Yeah. So he's a unique runner that can get a 50-yard run out of nothing because he just sort of herky-jerky and hard to corral. But if they can't get anything going through the tackles, then they've got to involve Martinez as a runner. I think Ohio State will have a plan for that. And I suspect Ohio State's secondary plan is going to be good. I really like their defensive coordinator, their co-defensive coordinator, Halfley. I think they've done a really good job already this season against the pass, and I suspect they'll have a real good plan for Nebraska. Ohio State has a distinct advantage in special teams. Nebraska does not have a field goal kicker right now. Their kicker is hurt. They've tried 4 different guys. The guy on Saturday missed a 27-yard field goal at the end of the game. Yeah. The previous guy had field goals blocked, extra points blocked. The previous guy shanked a kick. They have no answers at field goal kicker until their kicker gets healthy. So they're basically going to go for it on 4th and 7 at the 20-yard line. And then their punter's okay. Their return games haven't been great, and their kickoff defense is not very good. So if Ohio State has a good kickoff returner, look out, because that guy could give them some trouble. Nebraska's going to have a great crowd. It's going to be the best crowd they've had in a long time. Their fans are going to be into it. I think Nebraska will be juiced up. They've got some really good players on offense and defense. Nebraska does, individual players. They probably don't have the depth or the overall talent profile of Ohio State, but they're going to give it a shot. I don't know what the line is. I haven't seen it.
I think it's 16 right now.
That sounds about right.
Started out at 14 and we moved to 16 now because Ohio State fans get pretty jacked up this time of the year.
Well, no, I mean, I think the Sharps are probably looking at it and saying, how is Nebraska going to keep this team under 35, and where's Nebraska going to score 21? And that's
here's the most important question I have for you. Is Nebraska possibly going to wear all black? Could that possibly happen?
If they do, they wouldn't wear all black. They're just going to wear the black tops.
Oh, okay.
So it's just going to be a black top with a white pant and black stripes down the pant.
The reason I asked that, because that's what Iowa wore 2 years ago.
Yeah,
that's what Purdue wore last year. You know where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
So these could just be the black shirts, not the black all. Yeah.
They have a black jersey. My understanding is they might even have an away jersey with black pants, but I don't know that they would put the combination together. They might. Yeah. They're going to wear it some point this year. Game day's coming. They have this really they have a basketball thing the night before for Fred Hoiberg, where they have a rapper, Rick Ross, coming in. It's sold out. So it's going to be a really fun and festive weekend for Ohio State fans. Anyone who comes, they're gonna have fun. Nebraska's gonna treat this like a 48-hour, 72-hour party.
Let me interrupt you though. Why are Nebraska fans, you think, so nice to people, except for during the game? But before the game, they're about as nice of fandom as you're going to run into. I'm talking about for the opposing fans. And then after the game, they're also where does that come from in a nutshell, Sam?
Well, I think it comes from Nebraskans' desire to have people have a good impression of them. Mm-hmm. And I think at one time, right, when Nebraska was really, really good, there might have been a little patronization to it, like a little bit of, we know we're going to beat you by 60, so we might as well be nice to you before and after the game. Yeah. But as they've struggled over the last 2 decades, that's remained that way. And so I think it's not just being patronizing. I think it's just a genuine Nebraska feeling of, when you come here, we want you to feel at home. We want you to enjoy it. There's not a lot of malice in the stadium. Not that I've never experienced that at Ohio State, by the way. Ohio State fans have always been, in my opinion, good. They're not Wisconsin. Yeah. They're not Penn State. Yeah. So I think when you have a certain level of success, with the exception of Penn State's fans who are horrible, you tend to carry yourself with a little bit of class. And so Nebraska fans still carry themselves that way, right?
Yes.
It's not, it's not the crowd here can get real loud, but it takes a little bit to get them there. So it's not like the most bloodthirsty environment you'll see, but it's a lot of fun. It's very festive, and it's a very sort of celebratory atmosphere. And then the game kicks off, and there's going to be a lot of trepidation about Ohio State, because the last time they came in here, they beat Nebraska 56-14, and then they really beat them. And
yeah. It was a hammer.
I think
it was hammer time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, though. Yeah.
People still remember that, and so I think they have a healthy respect for Ohio State and the program that they've built. I think if you were to ask Nebraska fans which program they dislike more, they'd say Michigan.
Yeah, gotcha. Hey, Sam, it's been a slice, man. I really appreciate it. Go treat yourself to some California tacos after this is over, right. And tell them to bill Tim May back here at Lettermen Row. But man, I really appreciate it, Sam. Thank you very much.
You bet, brother. Take care.
All right, man. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald, one of the great guys who covers Nebraska football, one of the great guys you're ever going to run into, period, as you could tell from that interview. This is going to be an interesting match on Saturday night in Lincoln. And I'm going to be back with Austin Ward later in the program to kind of break down things where Ohio State stands and where it stands going into that game. But before that, I'm going to break down a play for you, my favorite play from Saturday, and I'm going to do all that when I return. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hey, college football fans, it's Zach Bourne here. You need to check out BetDSI.com. BetDSI is a great way to use your sports knowledge to make some extra cash. That's right. BetDSI is the top-rated online sportsbook. They've been paying winners for over 20 years. The reason they've been around that long is because they have got the fastest payouts in the industry. Plus, the user interface and mobile site is the best in the business. Play, win, and get paid. It's that simple. It doesn't matter if it's college football, the NFL, NBA, NHL, UFC, esports, reality TV, virtually anything. You can bet it. You can bet on it at BetDSI.com and get paid right now. There's no better way to add some excitement to games that you already are watching. Check out their live betting, where you can bet on games throughout the entire matchup, every play, and every minute until the end. BetDSI has a special deal for Lettermen Row fans. Use the promo code ROW100 to get a 100% bonus match. That's more than double. That's right, more than double your money to start winning today. Once again, go to BetDSI.com and use promo code ROW100 and get this limited 100% bonus offer to make some extra cash on the sports you know and love. BetDSI promo code ROW100. Now back to the show.
Welcome back, and thanks to the producers, directors here at Lettermen Row, we're going to break down another play for you, ladies and gentlemen. My favorite play from Saturday's game, because this is what I call audacious play calling. And as you can see by the script there, Ohio State's up 35-5. They're looking for the kill shot here. And let's take it back again, Spencer, to the very start of the play. It's 3rd and 20. Should they be setting up for a field goal? I mean, what's going on here? What's Ohio State up to right here? If you'll notice, you have two receivers to the left split out. I think that's tight end Jeremy Ruckert. And then you have 3 receivers to the right. What you can't see at the top of the screen there, J.K. Dobbins had gone from the backfield out, split way wide to the right, almost to the sideline, to just spread out this Miami defense. And Miami, as you'll notice, as this play develops, they've got 1, 2, 3 defensive linemen. All they're trying to do is keep the play in front of them, keep Ohio State from getting a first down. They've got a picket line set up here at about the 19-yard line, which will be backpedaling as the play starts. And they've got 5 defenders across the midsection, just to make things a little maybe more difficult for Justin Fields. But as you'll notice as the play develops, number one, Justin Fields will have plenty of time to throw the ball. And number two, as you watch right here, Justin Fields has every intention of forgetting about throwing for a first down, but hitting a man over the top, Benjamin Victor. Now let's go back to the start of the play again, Spence. Benjamin Victor's right up here. Just keep your eye on Benjamin Victor as this play rolls. Go ahead, Spence. The great thing about zone coverage And the folks listening on the radio, listening on the podcast can know this too. You can just run right through people if you want to, but you got to have a quarterback with the audacity and the basically the talent to throw the ball up there and beat a seam. As Benjamin Victor comes off the line of scrimmage, he has an inside receiver who runs a square in, which kind of takes care of one coverage man. Benjamin Victor runs past the underneath zone guy who had him, just kind of shoves him off, the underneath zone guy does, and Ben Victor just keeps going right up the field, turns it into a post cut. And what's great about the throw from Justin Fields is it's a little bit back shoulder, and Benjamin Victor, 6'3", 6'4", depending on what day you're measuring him, goes up well above the deep defender, the deep zone safety defender, hauls in the pass like it's a baby being thrown from the 15th floor, gets his right foot down, and scores the touchdown, which puts Ohio State up 42-5. If Miami had any hopes of a comeback, they were just dashed by this one play. But it also shows the chemistry that Justin Fields, in just a few short months, has developed with some of his primary receivers, not the least of which is Chris Olave, not the least of which is KJ Hill, and definitely not the least of which is Ben Victor, who finally, in this season, is living up to the projections that Urban Meyer had about him, that he has his highest ceiling as a receiver of anybody he's ever coached. This play is yet another example of what Ohio State can bring to bear with the talent it has on the offensive side of the ball when you dare to beat a deep zone by throwing the ball over the top. That sets this Ohio State offense apart now as it heads into the meat of Big Ten play. Once again, thanks to my producer, Spencer Holbrook, for running the video, and we'll be back in a moment as the show continues. Austin Ward, welcome into the show again, my friend.
Well, thank you for having
coming.
me.
Yeah, and that Justin Fields to Benjamin Victor connection's getting more important by the day, right?
The way you broke that down was phenomenal, Tim. And I just catching it live, that was one of the most impressive catches I thought I was ever going to see. And then Garrett Wilson topped it in the third quarter, whenever that was, with that circus catch from Chris Chugginoff. I guess my point is Ohio State has some really, really talented wide receivers.
Yeah, and the fact that you can go over the top on a 3rd and 20 play, to have the guts to do that against a zone defense where they had 3 deep in the – it just tells you something about, number one, the audacity of Justin Fields and the ability of Benjamin Victor.
And I think that there's a lot to that you see every week. Sometimes when we talk about chemistry and relationships with players, it might be a little bit overblown, but – quarterbacks need that faith that their guys can go make a play for them. For Justin Fields, he knows that he can put a ball up there and that Ben Victor is going to be able to get it. And this is not the first time that he's showed a remarkable ability to get a foot down on top of that.
Right.
I think, was it maybe Indiana last year at home in the back of the end zone? He's had a knack for the big play, right?
Yes.
We've seen that for a long time. And I think what's really made the difference, not for this specific play that you're talking about here, but he's doing better work in the short and intermediate game than he's ever done in his career. And then when you add on top the fact that Justin Fields knows if he's got to make a play, he's got a 3rd and long, Ben Victor's probably going to be that guy. And that's not to diminish Chris Olave, who is becoming an absolute superstar overnight. Austin Mack is he can be, I think, a 3rd down security blanket for intermediate routes, and KJ Hill. But when you want a pure highlight reel catch, Benjamin Victor is your guy.
Absolutely. Real quick, I'm looking at this team right now, and I'm seeing an offense which seems to add another few rose petals every week. I'm seeing a defense. Hey, it was 5-0, and that defense went out and took care of business, led by Chase Young.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Okudah getting his first interception. Should have had 2 in that game.
That would have been a bold prediction.
I did predict Jeffrey Okudah would get his first collegiate interception last week, and it happened. Hold your breath for what my next this week's prediction will be, but I digress as usual. But this is a team, like I was saying on radio before the game started last week. I do the pregame radio show with 97.1 The Fan, and I pointed out that this was a show me game. I'm talking about that game. Show me if you're really a national contender. Show me by beating this team the way you're supposed to. I'm summarizing it there. I went through a lot of show me's. All right, Ohio State's flying over the show me state. Missouri to get to Nebraska. This is a game. This is just a just win baby game. Agreed?
Yeah, I think it's if last week is show me, then this week is prove it. And in the Big Ten on the road and against a West Division opponent and against a program that is long used to success, you don't have to win by double digits, whatever the spread winds up being. You take any win you can get at Nebraska, and you go home feeling good about it. If pollsters aren't impressed, if they don't win by 21, and Ohio State can easily blow Nebraska out. We've seen that happen before. I don't expect it will be as tight as last year with the problems that Ohio State was having defensively. And for whatever reason, it seemed like a sort of sleepy outing, even though Dwayne Haskins was doing his thing. But whatever. I mean, you don't worry about the pollsters at this point. You're done with the non-conference part. You're going into the Big Ten. Nebraska, and I wrote about them a few months ago. This could be one of those games where they're a contender in the West, and you circle that on the calendar. Ohio State's going to know all that, okay?
Right.
So they're not going to be caught off guard with the trap.
Well, that's my big line. I've been saying all along, call this a trap game is not – I don't think it's not apropos because, like last year, we were pointing at that Purdue game. There's this trap sitting right there in this clearing. Don't step in it, and they stepped right in it. I'm talking about Ohio State. Same thing with this. You're out here on the plains of eastern Nebraska. There's a big trap sitting there, sitting right there. Don't step in it. But that's not as easy as it sounds.
That's correct because you still have to come with the right motivation. But we'll go down the list, and I know you were already doing this earlier in the show, but. I mean, maybe they're going to wear black. It's a West Division opponent. It's going to be at night. They've got to have a slot receiver who looks a lot like Rondale Moore, who Ohio State tried to recruit. I mean, you go down the list, and it's like, okay, well, these things trapped Ohio State in the past, and you check them off. Okay, well, that happened. Okay, we got to be on guard for that. We got to be on guard for that. Got to be on guard. There's no reason for Ohio State to be surprised.
Plus, they have a quarterback who can make a play on any play.
And they know
Adrian Martinez,
another guy that they know very well that they tried to, recruit in some form or fashion. So they're going to know the personnel that can give them problems. But I think Ohio State, they even showed in Miami of Ohio on Saturday a willingness to adjust just after 2 or 3 drives when they didn't necessarily have to. I mean, if they wanted to play zone and learn that on Saturday, they could have.
Yeah.
But they wanted to win the game, and they didn't want to give up a touchdown. So Jeff Hafley and Greg Madison and Al Washington and Larry Johnson and Matt Barnes changed up what they did on the fly. And in the past, Ohio State would be, I think, Greg Schiano was good at making adjustments, but he didn't make any until halftime, if he made them at all. This team, I think, is already showing a willingness. If that's not working, we're going to do this.
Well, they take another card. It's literally they take another card off the deck and throw it out there. And that's what's interesting to me is when you saw that bullet defense go in there. I mean, you could clearly see the bullet the other day. Now they'll probably tell us, no, that wasn't a bullet.
They didn't need your helmet signifier.
But when you got Brendan White on the field along with Sean Wade, and you got Baron Browning in there, that's the defense I expect to see a steady appearance from on Saturday night because it's almost built to go against this dangerous Nebraska offense, which starts with its quarterback, Adrian Martinez, who can turn any busted play into a 20, 25, 30-yard gain.
Yeah.
And like you said, the Spillman kid is ridiculous. I mean, they've got a bunch of receivers that are fleet that can make things happen. They have a running back who's very interesting to me because he kind of comes and goes.
Yeah.
But that seems to more the defense you'd want to be in more often than not to take care of to at least give you a shot against a slot guy, Sean Wade, et cetera, and to at least give you a shot against a running back.
I think that's another example. I was talking about the scheme. Well, Ohio State has done that in terms of mixing and matching personnel, where I think you got used to for so long. Those are the 3 linebackers. Those are the 4 defensive backs. Those are the 4 to 6 to 8 defensive linemen, and those are the guys who are going to play. That's not what Ohio State is doing right now, and there's also no reason for them not to use guys like Baron Browning, or when you talk about the bullet. If Pete Warner is better suited to defend the run, let him go out there when there's tight ends on the field. But if you're in a spread, Brendan White's your guy. He's got the safety stuff, and again, that's not taking anything away from Warner. But the same thing is true. You don't want to waste the talents of Sean Wade. You don't want to waste the talents of Jordan Fuller and or Josh Proctor if he gets healthy. And so I give them a lot of credit, and they'll have to continue doing this beyond just the first 4 games when, to be honest, it doesn't make a great big a deal when you have this level of competition. But if you're going to keep playing these guys and you're going to let Browning out there, if you're going to mix and match Tough Borland based on the personnel, I think it's an encouraging sign that they are showing that willingness to open up all their options because they have more of them than anybody else.
Yeah, I think this has the makings of being a very exciting game to watch because I think what sets this game apart on Saturday night is Nebraska has Adrian Martinez, Ohio State has Justin Fields. These are two of the more dangerous quarterbacks in the country. Fields might be a little better passer, but I think, that's neither here nor there. I think, like Sam McKewon was talking about, it seems like Adrian Martinez in the passing game kind of comes and goes with them. But, man, when they get those receivers involved, it's a pretty dangerous aspect. And, number two, they have the ability to run those wide screens. You got to figure that's one of the ways they're going to attack Ohio State. By wide screens, I mean the guy can, like a Spielman can catch the ball out on the edge and cut back inside almost like a jailbreak. I mean, he has that kind of ability and daring do about him. And in Ohio State the same way. I mean, they've got guys coming online right now, like you just talked about. I mean, Chris Olave, that's ridiculous. Then KJ Hill suddenly sneaks out and he's wide open. I mean, Ohio State has a lot going for it offensively right now, not the least of which is the play of its offensive line.
Well, and I touched on that in my story on Monday for Lettermen Row, looking at 5 questions, and it's like, can Nebraska stop Ohio State? And I really don't think so. The bad joke I made was that they're fumbling around in the darkness trying to find a black shirt. Like, you can't see how they can solve the problems that they have on defense. And Scott Frost, I'm not sure that that's a real big priority for him as many points as he wants to score.
No, he wants to play defense. I mean, that's what I was talking with Sam about. He comes in it with the idea that you've got to get the defense back to championship caliber. Championship caliber these days is not shutouts. It's not stoning teams continually. It's making those 3 or 4 huge stops in a game, which makes the difference.
Yeah, I guess I didn't mean to suggest that he doesn't care if they play defense or not, but I think I look at a program like Nebraska in this way, and Sam was talking about this as well. Yeah, if you can't recruit 1 through 85 at the same level as Ohio State wants to be the best offense in the country, the best defense in the country, and the best special teams. I don't think that a Nebraska or anybody else, Wisconsin, you have to pick what you're going to be. I think Wisconsin's very good. We're going to talk about them, I'm sure, later on as late October comes around. But you're going to have.
Who did Wisconsin just beat? I can't remember.
Somebody in
Michigan, 35-14. They were up 35-0.
Could have been worse. It was a great little exchange that you had in the media room on the way out on Saturday night with an interested observer in Greg Madison. I don't know if you want to share that story. That'll be for a later time, maybe.
Yeah.
But my point is,
but he wasn't surprised.
No, not a surprise. You're going to build one good thing, right? Nebraska is going to be offense. Purdue has chosen that route as well. They're going to be on offense. If you only have the bandwidth to make one great thing, and you're not going to be an annual national contender, you channel your energy where you can succeed. And for Nebraska and Scott Frost, I think he knows. You're not going to be able to get the black shirts back to the 1995 level, but you can get a dynamic offense that gives you a chance to win the West. And every few years, if you have the special lightning in a bottle like Adrian Martinez or special group of wide receivers, then you can jump up, maybe win the Big Ten, and who knows what happens from there. I think that's what's happened with Michigan State, is that they've found their ceiling, and they put so much into building that great defense, and they don't have any idea how to fix the offense.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that when you have limitations. You just have to recognize who you are. And I think part of the issue for Nebraska, at least when you look at what Bo Pelini was doing, where a lot of his success was coming on defense and an occasional offense that could jump up, is that they didn't understand that the ceiling for Nebraska has changed.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do.
But what was funny was under Bo Pelini, the defense deteriorated.
Well, yeah.
And that was hard to believe, And when I was talking with Sam about it, I mean, the main thing that Nebraska lost a hook of was recruiting. I mean, like you're talking about now, maybe now you have to sort of recruit to a certain area, which then kind of overshadows a deficiency elsewhere. But everybody's still trying to build a complete football team. It's easier to build an offensive flashy offensive team, as Washington State has shown,
Right.
than it is to build a big-time defense on the same group when you're kind of like on what I call an outpost team. I mean, Lincoln is an outpost. I mean, it's the Western outpost of the Big Ten, which used to be the Western Conference. But the bottom line is, these days it's tough to get, all of those guys to go to a place like Lincoln when you've got all these other programs going, sticking around and that are competing against you. Bob Devaney had a pipeline going to like the East Coast and maybe to a certain extent the Texas, et cetera.
Yep.
Osborne had the same thing going, but it definitely slipped under the Callahan-Pelini era, and they're still trying to get that going again.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, and there's going to be a game on Saturday night, but it was easier for Nebraska to be a national program and have that success when every game wasn't on TV. I think you touched on this with Sam. He's going to be more an expert than I am, but when you got to be everybody in the country is on TV, then that became a chip that wasn't in their favor anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just have to be in Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense to the people who live there, it's a great place to watch a college football game, but I don't think that you have a lot of recruits in Texas and Florida or California or even Ohio who are just like, that's where I want to go play.
Right.
That's where I can envision myself living there after I'm done.
Right.
And that has shifted, and that's harder. It's not easy to get to Lincoln. It's not like it's into Alaska, but it's
It's halfway there.
a lot of people going this week.
Yeah, yeah.
are going to be going to Omaha and then driving over. It's just, it's
No, you're right. You're right.
It's different, and I say that
The
because
fans have trouble grasping that. I think in modern times.
well,
but
they want it to be 1995.
of course they do. That's what college football is all about. It's tradition, man.
It's the same thing with Tennessee. That
Homecoming. They don't have homecoming in the NFL.
Yeah, that you and I were talking about with Tennessee. The ceiling changed for that program.
Yeah.
The ceiling has changed for Nebraska. You think back to them, going at it in 1998 and battling for national championships with Osborne and Fulmer. Those days are gone.
But do not discount that back in the 90s and back in the 70s and the late 60s or half of the 60s, that was a hell of a program, brother.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was a hell of a program.
I remember
all through the 80s.
I remember it very well.
Yeah.
When I told you a couple of weeks about going to my first game, Nebraska and Oklahoma, that was as good as it got.
Yeah, if you can avoid playing the ghost there and just play the players that are there right now, I mean, I could see this being a fairly high-scoring game. I think it's going to depend on whether Nebraska can hold serve, because I think Ohio State's going to have some success because Ohio State is an extremely balanced team right now with a running quarterback and a running back that's number 5 or 6 in the country, even having a down day last week yardage-wise.
Barely getting to work.
He still had the play that kind of got the offense going with that touchdown. I'm talking about J.K. Dobbins. Ohio State's a two-headed monster at running back right now, I do believe, with Master Teague.
Mm-hmm.
He had that fumble, but he could be just exactly what they need on Saturday night in Lincoln.
Yep.
And then defensively, like we talk about, they can roll a bunch of different options out there from a defensive standpoint and not get too cute about it and give a team problems. So, I mean, this looks like a game. Like I said, doesn't look like a trap game to me. It looks like a game you should go in there and take care of business with. But we've all seen it not work a couple of times in the last 2 years. And, who knows what happens when the sun goes down, right?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a long week for Ohio State because I know they're going to hear about it Tuesday. Wednesday, the media's in there. Ryan Day will probably be talking about it some to them or maybe I don't know how much he will, but they're going to have to answer questions about Iowa and Purdue, and that's going to get old. I get tired of even hearing it and having those conversations with them, but it's a real thing with this team that if they're going to get over the hump, these are the games that trip them up.
Yeah,
they don't have problems getting up.
Trip them
for
up.
The rivalry. They're
knock them off.
They're not going to have problems getting up for Wisconsin. They're not going to have problems getting up for Michigan State at night at home. Those things are given, and when Ohio State knows the challenge, they have almost always met it. At least in the 8 years I've been here, they don't get tripped up against big-time opponents, and they like being underdogs too, which is not going to be something that happens this year, but just as an aside. So this is, to me, it'll be significant if Ryan Day takes them on the road, plays a West Division opponent, has a dangerous offense, comes back with any win. I think you just take it and say that's good, but they also have the ability, and it won't surprise me if they do blow them out, because that will tell me even more about Ohio State if that's what they do.
I agree. Well, our producer, director, and cameraman, Spencer Holbrook, has given me the wrap it up sign very vigorously. And, boy, I really do appreciate you coming on again, Austin. It was great talking with Sam McKewon. One of the things I like about this show, too, is to borrow a phrase from Forrest Gump, man, all the Diet Dr. Pepper you can drink. And with a cold, sometimes I need it. But we'll be back next week. Austin will always join me on this show. If, in fact, he's in town.
As long as you'll have me, I'm going to be here.
I'll tell you what, sitting here high above downtown Columbus, man, it's a great setting. We'll be back to talk about that Nebraska game, to look forward to Michigan State, which, by the way, is going to be a hell of a test no matter what happens in Lincoln on Saturday.
Right.
But until then, this is Tim May. Thanks for joining me on the Tim May Podcast.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buck IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.